Hi, this is Edmund Bradford, and in this video I'm going to give you more information about the performance dashboard in the simulation. We'll be covering a few topics, so we'll be looking at market segmentation and the different market coverage strategies that we can use once we've segmented the market. We're also going to look at the value proposition, value maps, and finally the BCG. So if you're interested in any of those areas, then just watch the video, or you can of course fast forward to the appropriate point in the video itself. So let's get started. To access the performance area, we simply click on that pie chart on the home screen, and that takes us straight in. We can also access by pressing the performance button on the horizontal menu bar, and that takes us to the main performance screen area. Now the first thing that you should pause to reflect upon is this grid up here with these 4 different product categories, 4 different customer sectors, and 16 different segments. And the reason you should think about that is because that is a really good way to do market segmentation, by developing a product market grid. And the reason I'm saying that is that when a lot of companies do segmentation, they tend to do it from either one or the other direction. So, for example, companies themselves tend to segment the market in terms of what they make. So, for example, they might say, yes, we've segmented the market into mobile phones, computers, and tablets. Okay, but that's what we make, and not necessarily what customers need. And the other way to do it is from looking at the customer point of view. And if you commission a market research company to do segmentation, they will probably end up dividing the marketplace into different consumer groups. Now sometimes these groups down the left hand side, sometimes they'll be called segments themselves, and that may be correct if they're segmented correctly, but as far as the simulation is concerned, we're calling these sectors because they're done quite simply on age. There are some different needs underneath them as well, but we haven't really attempted to give you all the clever micro-analysis that is used in the grocery market in the UK, and to see how they've segmented it, because it is quite a complicated exercise. But the main point for you to realise is that true segmentation is going to be always a combination of who buys the products or services and what is sold to those people. And this approach works in every industry that I've ever worked in, every industry that I've ever looked into can use this approach. Everybody sells something, and of course somewhere along the line there is somebody or some organisation buying those products or services. And just be aware, of course, that although we're in the B2C, the business to consumer situation here, this can equally be used in B2B. So, for example, down the left-hand side, if you're selling complicated machinery, for example, then you might have different industry sectors down the left-hand side. So this one might be aerospace, this one might be transportation, this one might be construction. Or indeed, if you wanted to be maybe a little bit cleverer about it, you might say that at the top end here we have our most important strategic relationship accounts. Down the middle here we have our regular accounts, and down at the bottom we might have more of our bread and butter kind of territory accounts. And if you want to do a really good job of segmentation, there are a number of things to do, but some of the things to look at, for example, is to think about what other product lines your competitors are selling that you're not currently selling yourself. And perhaps even to do some really good segmentation down here, where you find what we call blue oceans. These are customers or consumers who have needs that are not being met by any company out there. And if you find any customers like that which are not being served effectively by anybody, those can be your actual real gold customers, gold segments. So this little grid here may look quite simple at first sight, but actually it's very, very powerful. And now that we kind of understand it a bit more, we can also start to use it as well. So you should think about this as maybe your battlefield or your chessboard, and you need to think about where you're going to play in the battlefield. Unfortunately for us, some great minds have already thought about that. So, for example, Philip Kotler, one of the greatest minds in marketing, has come up with 4 or 5, depending on how you interpret it, different market coverage strategies. And these are the strategies. So first of all, you could have a product-focused strategy. That means your intention is to dominate one of these product lines. So for example, you might want to dominate the frozen category here and have a category killer strategy there. And there's a good example of that out there, which of course in the UK is Iceland, okay, which sells frozen food, and its intention is to dominate that particular category. Another company is Oddbins, which sits over here, sells wine effectively to all ages, or should I say all legal ages. The next strategy is a sector-focused strategy, and so for example, at the top end of this grid, you could have a child focused strategy. So for example, if Mothercare, which is in the UK, has lots of stores selling clothing, if they ever wanted to get into baby food and drink, then this is where they will sit at the top end of this particular marketplace. So that is a sector-focused strategy. And the third strategy you can have is a niche strategy. So you may just corner part of this particular market. So for example, you might want to corner the southwest corner of this market here, these little 4 quadrants there, and sell food items to the kind of senior market. And you can take, for example, a restaurant chain like Carluccio's that now has little corner shops often associated with or next door to their restaurant, and that's where you can buy some really good Italian produce there. The fourth strategy is called a selective specialization strategy, and that is simply cherry picking your best options. So you can decide, actually I'm going to pick the best segments which are growing the fastest, which have the least competition, where they fit my overall strategy, where I expect to get great margins in the future, and just pick those off and really just home in on those. And a company that could be argued is following that strategy is the Co-op, which will tend to have smaller corner shops, so they have to be very selective in terms of what they put in those shops, but they don't tend to try and cover the whole product range at all. And finally, the fifth and final strategy is the domination strategy, the total coverage strategy. Whereby we have an aim to be number one in the total marketplace, and there are many examples of that out there. The big retailers, Tesco, Sainsbury's, Asda in the UK, are all following that real, number one global coverage strategy to be the number one in the actual marketplace itself. So you should really, look at yourself, do your SWOT analysis. Look at your competitors and really think carefully about what you think your winning coverage strategy should be in this game. The next thing I wanted to talk about is the value proposition. So to see that, we just go to the selected segment. Okay, that defaults to the top left-hand segment. Here we can obviously tool around and see different segments and different views in those segments. And here's our value proposition down here. Now these items down here are what we call key buying factors or key needs of the consumers, and again these are very, very important issues for marketers. This whole subject of value proposition is an extremely important issue for marketers. It is universally applicable as ever to different industries. There will be a value proposition thinking, and there'll be a lot of serious thought put into value propositions in whatever company you might think of. So for example, down here we have the 5 key buying factors already given to you, which makes your life a lot easier, okay, but they can be very difficult to uncover. So for example, often a lot of money and resources is spent on doing things like deep discovery interviews, where they will sit down with a customer, if it's B2B for example, and seriously try to understand what their needs are. Ask them to walk you through the process of using their product. Salespeople might even be watching them using the product to find out what even their unexpressed needs might be that even they are not aware of. So this is a really quite an important area, and what you're trying to do is really to understand where value comes from. Okay. And companies can pursue their own very different strategies around the value proposition. So, for example, in the supermarket world, the grocery world in the UK, we can look at different companies and see what they are doing. So, for example, in terms of following a price leadership, a price-focused strategy, we have companies like Lidl and Aldi that are doing very, very well and stealing market share from the established players. In terms of pursuing a strong branded strategy with lots of, for example, advertising using their brand, we have, for example, the John Lewis partnership, which owns Waitrose, which have a very, very strong brand in the UK. In terms of choice, this is where we have sort of warehouse type stores that try to have good breadth and depth of products on their shelves, so every variation of everything you could ever want is pretty much there, and you get the big companies like Tesco and Asda with their warehouses following that particular strategy. In terms of green image, we have a company which is struggling a little bit in the UK, Morrison's, that is actually quite vertically integrated and actually owns its own farms and tries to play upon the message that it is a very green-friendly store, which has a good control of its supply chain. And then in terms of convenience, we have the local corner shop, and the best example of that is Co-op, for example, which has thousands of stores up and down the country. And those stores are very conveniently situated in the middle of urban areas, so consumers do not need to travel very far to do their shopping. And as I said in the Getting Started video, it's really important for you to get your value proposition correct, to try and diagnose the needs of customers correctly, and to also try to diagnose how your competitors are going to be fighting for those customers as well, so that you can come up with a differentiated value proposition. Now there's one important point here, it's an important technicality which you need to be aware of with this value proposition, which is in all trading situations, you will have a minimum level of value that is acceptable, and that's quite understandable. So for example, if your pricing is just completely out of line with the competition, you're going to say, well, I'm not even going to go there. Okay. If the choice is completely unacceptable, then you say, well, I'm not going to go there. It happens in every industry. In B2B as well, for example, you have actually well defined what they call order qualifier limits. Okay, for you to even be considered for a tender. So what we do in the game is we keep it quite simple. Is we say that your value that you provide on each of these points of value need to be in positive territory. If any of these points of value touch 0, okay, which means that consumers are giving you a 0 score on any of them, then you will automatically drop down to the number 5 ranking here. Okay, so when you're doing your decision making, you need to be keeping an eye on these scores here and making sure that your scores are always in positive territory. Even if they're at 0.1, that's okay. It may be very uncompetitive, by the way, but if any of them touch 0, then again, as I say, you would drop down to the 5th ranked store, which means consumers will start deserting you and moving to your competitors. Now, the value proposition is a huge area in business, so I'm not going to spend too much long on it here, but I do encourage you to do your own research and find out more about it. Now there is another chart in the game that looks at value, and that is the value map. So to find that, we simply go to segment totals, okay, and you can see down here it says value map. So let's just click on that one, okay, and then we just scroll down so we can see it. Okay, and there it is. And so as you can see, this shows your relative price on this axis versus your relative quality on this axis. And the size of the bubble is actually your sales from the last period, which you can see over here if you want to see the actual exact numbers. And the way these axes work is that this is a low price here. Okay, that's a company that's charging low prices, and up here this is a company charging relatively high prices. Just be aware, of course, that if you're a company that is charging high prices, then you will have, on the value proposition that we've just been talking about, you will have a low price performance. Okay, so you're seen as a little bit expensive, so you'll be given a low price performance on the value proposition. And conversely, down here, if you have low prices, so you're seen as a low cost store, then actually you'll be given a high score on the value proposition. You'll be given a high price performance on the value proposition. So just remember, you have to swap the high-low on this axis with the high-low scores on the value proposition. Okay, and down here on the horizontal axis, again we have low quality down the left and high quality on the right. And in fact, these scores taken as an average from the other scores on the value proposition for the other key buying factors. So this is a useful chart to show the value being delivered by the different stores. Now, at the start of the game, because the value proposition is flat across all the key buying factors, then these competitors are all placed on top of each other. But as the game evolves and the value proposition starts to split out a little bit, then these bubbles will start separating out themselves. So I think the best thing to do is actually to take a look at another game which was has been played, and we can look at the value map for that game that's actually midway through. Okay, so here we are in an actual game. We're about halfway through this particular game, and as you can see, the value map now looks a bit more spread out in terms of the bubbles, so we can see things a bit more clearly. And the way to use this chart is to draw an imaginary line, or you can copy and paste it into a PowerPoint or something. Draw an imaginary line from bottom left up to top right. And any company or store that is above the line is offering an inferior value, i.e. they're providing higher priced products at a lower quality, and any companies to the bottom and the right of the line are actually offering superior value, so they are offering lower prices and higher quality. So you can see that our best value store in this case is a big store. They are offering low priced items with good quality on the other key buying factors. And our two problem stores in this particular case is our Greenworld and Drinkit, and they are offering inferior value. Now we can see that a little bit better if we go to the other value map chart, which is the points chart, and all this does is remove the sales bubbles so that you can see the actual points better. These are of course the center points of the circles, and this more clearly shows that in this particular segment the market has really split between two companies offering inferior value and three companies offering more superior value. So of course what happens in that situation is that consumers will be deserting the stores offering inferior value and will be going to the stores offering superior value. So these stores down here should see rising market share, and these stores over here should be seeing declining market share. And certainly I know in this particular game that Big Store here was actually achieving the fastest growing market share of all the stores in this particular game. Now these results are for a particular segment that we're exploring, this baby and toddler fresh food segment. If you wanted to see the other totals, then you can look at the totals by sector, which is the whole horizontal slice across the whole baby and toddler sector, by product or by market. So I hope you can see that that's a very useful chart, the value map points chart and the value map sales bubble chart, and if you use that in combination with your value proposition, that will really help you to achieve superior value. So the final thing I want to do in this particular video is look at the BCG matrix. So I'll just swap back to the other game that's at the start. So here we are back in the original game, at the start of the game in fact, and to reach the BCG you simply click on this particular tab here and it pulls up the BCG matrix. Now as you can see I've put a big ugly grey square in the middle of this because there's commercially sensitive information here for Big Store, which I don't think they would appreciate me sharing with everybody. So this is the BCG matrix for Big Store, and the BCG matrix is a key tool. It's one of these tools which is used in a cross-functional, cross-departmental way. So the accountants know about it, operations will know about it, product development have their own version of it. So it's really one of these fundamental basic tools of marketing strategy that you really need to get your head around, and the last thing you want to be happening is you get the finance department educating you on how the BCG matrix works. Now often it's just used with products, and in fact I'd say in the majority of cases it's just used with products. So we have just products shown on the BCG matrix, and it's used to help understand which of those are the early part of their life cycle or which towards the end of their life cycle, etc. But in strategic marketing we can go one better, because we're looking at product market combinations. Then we can actually look at something that was far more useful than just looking at products, which is actually looking at how those products are performing in their individual segments. So we have two axes on here. We have annual growth, which shows how quickly a particular segment, a product market segment combination is growing. Okay, and so here's our 16 product market segments down here. So this annual growth percentage shows how quickly those are growing. So for example, S16 down here, which is this small pensioner drinks segment, is growing at about 10% per annum. Now the axis that really does fox a lot of students of this is the relative market share axis down here. Okay, relative market share is different to market share. It really says what is my market share compared to the market leader. So for example, in that relatively small pensioner drinks product market segment down there, Big Store, its market share is only about 45% of the market share enjoyed by the market leader. Now if your market share, your relative market share point is over 100, if it goes to say 120, then that means you are the market leader and you have 20% more than anybody else. And if your market share is kind of on the 100% mark, that means that you're actually an equal leader to somebody else as well. Okay, so that's an important point. The other thing just to note is that the charts in the simulation, the axes, we have a simple low-high approach to the charts in the simulation. So you may find that in the literature that the actual BCG matrix might have high-low rather than low-high on some of these axes, so that the quadrants, for example, the cash cow, dog, star segments might be in different positions. So just watch out for that when you're using the BCG matrix itself. So I encourage you to do your own research. There's lots of information out there on the BCG matrix. You may have your own notes as well. And also we've placed some more support documents around the BCG in the support documents area. There's some slides on it which actually will help you show, for example, the quadrants, how the quadrants sit on the particular simulation. And also, if you look in the support documents area, you'll also see some other materials which will help you in this whole performance area, including understanding market segmentation and understanding the value proposition. So I hope those are useful, and see if you can use the information in this video to get a little bit of an edge on your competition. Okay, good luck.